you like a sunlight. I'll be in the fall. We can still fall. Dice rolling below in the spawns. Never solo road slow to the Dogs of Warcry.
Dogs of Warcry is a new podcast from the Mortal Realms focusing on Warcry, a fast-paced cinematic skirmish game by Games Workshop. Join us for discussions on gameplay, rules, lore, painting, terrain building, campaigns, and events. In Episode 2, we're discussing the best way to muster a warband, the easiest or cheapest way to your first 1,000 points, because we know you'll be hooked after that. Welcome to the Warband. My name is Eric, or Stone Monk Gamer, and answering the call with me again this episode is Josh and Payvand. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a fun week with the first episode out and such fantastic responses from everybody. And now that we have our stream on iTunes, you can definitely go and give us a review. 5 stars if you can, please. And joining us for this episode is Paul, who you may know from the Mortal Realms podcast and from running the Age of Sigmar narrative event at Adepticon the last couple of years and upcoming this year as well. Right, Paul?
That's correct.
And many other accolades and a huge member of the AOS community. How are you doing, Paul?
Doing great. Having a good time.
Sounds like it, man. Just coming out on fire.
Coming out! All guns blazing!
So we're going to start off this episode with our hobby progress. Obviously, Games Workshop has given us a mythic level of hobby ready and waiting for us for Warcry. So we're going to talk a little bit about our projects. Paul, since it's your first time on Dogs of Warcry, why don't you share with us first your the first Warband you've got out the gate for our league and any other projects that you're working on for Warcry?
Well, I started with the Corvus Cabal. I was sitting there deciding between the Splintered Fang and the Corvus Cabal, and the Strike Talon made the difference for me. The two characters were just a little bit cooler for me than the Splintered Fang. Not 100% sold on the elf with the scale mail. I got really excited about them, and I was actually able to go to the first night of the local league here run by you, sir, Mr. Stoneman Gamer. And so I got super excited and painted up the whole warband before the first night. It was good fun. And then I'm going to be working on a Legions of Nagash warband. One of my friends has expressed some interest after playing against me with Stormcast. He wanted to switch to the Legions of Nagash. So we're going to make something for him to be able to play with. And then, as always, just working on terrain. More and more terrain. So...
Have you been so the Gibbering Dome terrain is massive, and you created enough of it to create like ever-changing scenario, like full tables for 6 games, 5 games.
It's four 6x4 tables with some pretty intensive level changes, basically.
Yeah. And you've been adapting that to Warcry, which obviously you've already got the levels going on. How's that been going? Trying to kind of find additional, I guess, elements?
I've already played my first game on the Gibbering Dome terrain, and it was just a ton of fun. My friend Alan came over, and he was the one who was playing the Vanguard, and just set up kind of this little home base, and we pulled the cards, and it was the Assassinate war plan. And so I was attempting to defend myself on an upper level with stairs, and being able to play with the Warcry movement rules really made me, I don't know, much happier, if that's possible, with the Gibbering Dome terrain, because with the walls that I've built, everything works just so super simple and super smoothly, and that was just a very satisfying interaction. The main difference between my terrain and the Warcry standard terrain is that my walls are 4 inches instead of 3 inches. But I am thinking of building up my own version of the Gibbering Dome of the base set terrain, so I can use maybe some of those cards and also just allow that to look a little bit more for the same feel as a normal game of Warcry. So
I like it. Well, that's an interesting point. I actually think there could be something to having them above 3 inches, just so that there's no question.
Yep, exactly. No 2.97 inches question. It's 4 inches, buddy.
Exactly. So very cool. All right, Payvand, what have you been up to?
So I've been working on a couple things. First, I finished my Loon boss on Giant Squig. It's not quite Warcry, but maybe one day it'll be allied in. But I finished up my Loon Curse boss, which allowed me to buy my next item to paint, which was my Loon Shrine, which is cool to bring into Warcry. One, because like as my narrative campaign progresses, we actually start building Loon Shrine. So it was nice to actually get a physical one that I can build myself.
Right.
Where I'm really trying to push myself here is the Loon Shrine is not really a fun terrain piece to play with Warcry because there's not a lot of interaction. It's just kind of this thing that sits. So what I've been trying to do is build platforms and gantries and like kind of things that you can climb across that goblins have kind of like put on this, shrine to their god.
Yeah.
And so I've been really working on that. It's really been it's not necessarily my wheelhouse, but I've been using Eric's kind of his recommendation for like building like kind of like sloppy wood and like using that to build on my platform.
Can I coin that term? Can that be my sloppy wood technique?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's make sure we're still gonna have a PG-13 rating on this podcast, though.
I think you ruined it by mentioning it.
Fair.
We'll get it in post.
Now, another way you could go, obviously the Ragnarok.
Too late. I'm already like most of the way through this.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say the Ragnarok like platform stuff could. I don't know how well that looks on the Loon Shrine, the newer plastic stuff, but I'm excited to see it when you get that ready, and I will definitely kick your bounders off of that thing as soon as I have a chance.
So, Payvand, I have a question for you.
Yeah, shoot.
So, you had to finish painting your Loon boss on Giant Squig before you could buy your next model. Is that what you said?
Yeah. We don't need to get into it, but yeah, I'm very strict.
Well, so basically what you're saying is that you have your own campaign level for Warcry, and your convergence is finishing painting models. And unless you achieve your convergence, you cannot unlock your campaign to the next level. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't quite follow, but sure, yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, that is super cool, though. More power to you.
That's not a bad work ethic or hobby ethic, not at all. So very cool, very cool. Anything else you've been working on?
The only other small thing is like as we've been playing in our campaign, and my miniatures do specifically well, or they get destiny levels. I can often give them like a little extra paint job, especially like the older goblins. So like one of my goblins, I think it's Gripe. He grabbed an objective and he leveled up his destiny. So I gave him like kind of another layer of highlights and gave him checks on his hood to show his, how important he was in the warband. So that's kind of fun to do, and that's pretty fast.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
Nice. So how is why don't we touch on that briefly? How are you doing in the campaign?
I think I'm doing pretty good. I missed last week, so I'm a little bit behind in games, but I'm four games into my campaign, to my quest. I finished my first convergence, and so that was very satisfying. My goblins are continuing their bottle quest. Yeah, their first convergence is they like run into another group and they run away. Successfully ran away from ghosts.
It is hard to joust ghosts.
All right.
Oh, very cool, very cool. All right, Josh, what you been working on?
So I've been working on several different terrain elements. Working on one kind of a undead, death-based tower that's been a birthday present for several years in the works for my stepson. And he wants to use it for his Armies on Parade display for his Warcry warband he's been converting. So that kind of put it on the priority list. So I've been working on that quite a bit. I did get the Shattered Storm Vault magnetized, and that's all been working really well, which is nice. And I've been working on color schemes for the warband, working on a test piece, and still browsing for color schemes for the terrain itself, so we can kind of tackle that. But looking forward to that.
Very cool, very cool. And how have you been doing on the campaign?
I've been very fortunate in the campaign. The Envoys of Madness of a 9-win running streak so far, and I just today finished dominating the 6th territory and have, got, I think, most of the way through the campaign chart. So far so good. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been pretty good.
I'm having deja vu for the last campaign I played with Jack.
No, it's very good. Have you had any like
deja vu? I meant PTSD.
Do you have any defining moments of those 9 wins, or does it start blurring all together?
No, it's definitely been circumstantial, so the quest, makes a huge difference. The twists sometimes have favored me, or at least didn't add anything to my opponent's forces. Some cases it's the numbers, where I played Iron Jaws in 2 different games and I just had double the models, so it made some of the missions easier. So I've noticed it can really depend on what the mission is and its effect. And after that many games, I'm starting to get a little better at playing the forces and how to use their special abilities, and that's helped a lot. So
very cool, very cool. Let's see. Well, yeah, we've just finished our 3rd week as of this. So as of hearing this, we're going to be coming into our 4th week of the campaign. And it's been a lot of fun. We had a big turnout the first couple weeks. We maybe dropped a third the 3rd week, but hoping we can kind of pop that back up. People, it's you can't get too down on a down week or anything like that. But it's to be expected. Sometimes these go hot at the beginning. So hopefully we can carry that forward. We can get that energy. It's been fun kind of showing up and being able to play. I'm still trying to get a handle on what to track, and I've got a spreadsheet with some information that helps me kind of figure out where people are at, etc. I want to crack the code so that we can run these better, start adding our own stuff on top of it, etc. The Dogs of Warcry, my Untamed Beast Warband, I've played 4 games. Managed to win my convergence, which was pretty cool. And that was against Josh, your stepson, Ben. And he was playing the Legions of Nagash. And I was at the first round, it was like, yeah, we're both crushing some stuff. Second round, I was like, oh, I don't have enough to get through this. And then 3rd round, I had a nice kind of out of left field kind of play with my Beast Speaker and my First Fang, you being able to use their special abilities to kind of get in position and steal an objective at the end. And so it was fun to have it come down to kind of some of those special abilities and kind of, if I hadn't brought those characters or those models, then I wouldn't have been able to grab that at the end, right? So it felt good to have them their special abilities be valued. My other fun was obviously Paul, Josh, and I played a Triumphant Treachery for the first time, and I couldn't stick around for the whole game, but I had a Plains Runner run up and smack your Thrall Master for, I think he got 2 attacks in a row. I don't know how he survived to get to a point where he got 2 attacks, but his first attack he got 1 crit, and his second attack he got 3 crits. So he put some hurt. Or she put some hurt on him, so she got a name which was Smoke Blood.
Nice
for turning that smoke into tangible blood on the ground. So that was fun, and I've been trying to paint that warband. I actually picked up, like I said, I've got a second sprue or set of sprues, a box of the Untamed Beasts, and then I also figured out how I wanted to incorporate the what is the Underworld's warband, Godsworn Hunt, and was able to. I've got 26 models, so I can't even fit them all on a roster. But I've got a junior First Fang, so it's like a 3rd Fang, a junior Beast Caller,
Baby Fang,
Beast Speaker, and then I've got like a Mystic or a Leader, which kind of inspired out of one of the books. If you're listening to this, you've probably also just recently hopefully listened to our anthology episode on the Mortal Realms, where Paul and I is with Davey and Aaron kind of talk through the Warcry anthology stories, and it was really cool getting some more flavor from that. Otherwise, I finished up my starter set terrain in about a week. kind of finally got to start on that last weekend and finished it up in time for, or 2 weekends ago, got it in time for our last league. And putting up more videos. So I'm burning on all cylinders, and I hope it doesn't stop. Well, I'm glad that you guys have been having fun in the hobby and putting out some cool stuff. Looking forward to seeing what everybody else is putting out. Share it with us on Twitter at Dogs of Warcry. Get into that community there on Facebook, or join us on our Discord if you're interested in kind of sharing and talking about Warcry with us there. Payvand, what is going on in Warcry news these days?
Oh, we got a lot of Warcry news, Eric. Thanks for asking. The most exciting thing is, I think, is monsters and mercenaries. And I don't think we want to get too deep in there, one, because we haven't read the book yet, and there's a lot of exciting things coming in. But a quick overview is we're getting rules for a lot of monsters, a lot of chaos, and monsters from all Grand Alliances in there. We also have like heroes, or they're called allies or mercenaries, where they're bringing in a lot of the kind of the character models from Age of Sigmar and giving them rules and allowing them to join your warband. We don't have a full list on there, but there is 44 models on the Allies tab on the Games Workshop website, and so that's what we're predicting will be like the collection that is going to be in the game. I'm very excited. There's going to be exalted quests they've talked about where you get where all factions can participate, and so it's artifacts and command abilities. Overall, a very cool expansion. Really excited. $25 feels very like modest and reasonable to jump into.
What are the other things that are out besides the monsters and mercenaries?
Well, so we'll have the new Ravaged Lands coming out at the same time, the Defiled Ruins, which is a combination of sprues from the Azurite Ruins and Azurite Townscape. So that'll add, again, something else with a second level. And coincidentally, or I guess intentionally, they can be used to integrate with the core set for Warcry as well. They've got the same ends that combine, so you can make huge monstrous constructions if you wish to. In addition to that, they're releasing everything, the Iron Golems, Untamed Beasts, Beasts of Chaos are all being released in separate boxes, so you don't have to have the starter box anymore to get those. And as one of the monster sets, they're re-releasing the Chimera with some Warcry cards, which would be nice.
Yeah. So I'm really glad to see the Iron Golems and Untamed Beasts out as their own box for expansions and kind of moving forward. I think that's a nice thing for them to move forward with, but there's a little bit of kind of just the concern with online with some of the release having Warcry is 1 month since it's or under a month since since it first released, and it's already got more stuff coming out. And then the other part is the monsters and mercenaries. How much is that going to affect our core games, and kind of when you roll up to play a game of Warcry at the store and you're just kind of casual, are you going to have to deal with somebody else's monster or ally if that's not the style of game you want to play? So I'll just kind of put it out to you guys. Maybe Paul, I don't know if you have a thought on the Fast and Furious release schedule here, or kind of that effect on casual play. What are you excited about for this release, and do you feel some of those concerns as well?
So this is always one of my soapboxes, and so be prepared. But I think having extra rules added in is super awesome. I know that many people haven't finished necessarily doing their campaign, but I'm totally okay with that, because every game that you play with another player, there's a social contract there, right? Like, you're playing against another individual. We're not playing video games here. So if you want to play against somebody else and you're like, you know what, I don't really have a chance to do the heroes here, you can do match play 1,000 points, right? If you don't want to play with the monsters, or you do want to play with the monster hunt, that's a super easy thing to communicate. And I think it adds something, and I don't really think that anything is taken away. So as far as being too fast, too soon, I mean, Eric, if you don't mind me saying so, if you've got the passion, why not strike while the iron is hot, right? If you want people to make this a long-term investment, I think it's a great way of giving people more at the moment they're super excited about playing more.
I agree. No, I think there's some really good points there. How about you, Josh? What are you excited for with this release? And have you had any of those conversations on Facebook or anywhere else?
Yeah, no, I have, and the advice I've kind of passed along is that, the more ways that we can enjoy the game, that more ways that other people can enjoy the game, the better, because everybody gets different things out of all the games we play, the narrative aspect, or, what's in their collection and the campaigns, or is it just match play? And I think this just gives people more tools to play with, which will, I think, attract more people, but also you said, extend the life of the game. It'll create unique scenarios, unique campaign quests, and integrate models from people's collections that they have right now, or encourage them to pick up some more things. So I definitely think more options for people to engage in the game, the better.
How about you, Payvand? Is there, because you can't buy that next thing until you paint this thing, does having a lot of stuff coming out make you nervous? Does it feel like an avalanche?
Well, without getting too far into it, I can buy as many books as I want because they're not miniatures that need to be painted. So I'm always down for a nice book release.
I feel like
pick this up.
I feel like we do have to have an episode where we do get into it at some point, but not today. We won't put you in this any more than we have, I guess. But is there anything you're excited about? Is there something more than any other thing?
Oh, heck yes. I think monster hunts sound very narrative and like something I want my warband to do is just, swarm some beast and take it over. I think using those really cool large models in a skirmish game is a nice asymmetrical game. I got a lot of those models that are on the allied list, that I own and that I have painted, and I'm really excited to use those in my games, and I'm just excited to see what else is in that book, because I'm not, we don't have a full list of all those things. So
right,
I'm gonna pick it up right away when it comes out.
Yeah, some people have gotten their early release stuff, and if you do go over to Gorilla Miniatures on YouTube, he does do an unboxing and walkthrough of it. It was cool to listen to kind of what things are included, what's there. And one of the things I guess I was most worried about, that kind of the founded of okay, now everyone's going to want to have one of these AOS heroes. Would they raise the game level? Are they going to be twice as powerful as your unit leader, right? Your warband leader. And at the moment, without looking at anything in the book, just at first glance, it seems like they're mostly on par with unit leaders. And again, maybe abilities are where they start doing things that are more fun or themely and interesting. But as we know, you're not guaranteed abilities, right? It's where they fall, when they fall, and if they're even applicable for the game you're playing. So it's one of those things where they could be fun, kind of have some clutch abilities that make a game fun, but it seems like it might be hard for any one of them to just dominate. And like you said too, Payvand, the monster hunt. I think everybody wants to go up against a monster in this kind of style, a warband fighting a monster. And for me, all of these different rules, if they didn't come out with a book, I was gonna figure out a way to model them up, right? Write them up or whatever for upcoming events, or throw it in as a another element of a league, because I feel like I'm going to need ways to keep it current, keep it interesting, and possibly we're on week 4 here of our campaign. Maybe the second 4 weeks introduces some of these elements. We talked about after our 8 weeks are done, we're going to do a palate cleanser and just fight some monsters for a bit, and then go into our next campaign. So there's just so many things that this gets me prepared for. That being said, at least with our leagues, I feel like we're in a position to kind of control the flow, create the expectations for players when they come into play these league games, that we are going to, are we going to use monsters and mercenaries? Are there any, kind of elements that we say, well, you can have up to one of this, or et cetera, et cetera. Can we create the space where everybody kind of feels comfortable getting into it and they don't feel rushed into it if they're not there yet? So I think that there's some things as a community we can do locally. I can see, rocking up to a casual game and somebody's got their monster in their box and saying, hey, can I play with my monster? And it being like, I don't want them to not play with their toys, but I don't have a monster, or that's not how I've been playing. I think the other thing is that if we want Warcry to grow and more people playing it, as we do and Games Workshop does, having something coming out on the regular is important for kind of their presence, keeping it up in the news on the websites, keeping us talking about stuff. So it's one of those necessary evils, I think, of growing a new game that they got to keep top of mind. I'm definitely excited as well. We're all on the same page.
Yeah. Well, I think it adds a lot of narrative juice and chunks that we can bite on while they're working on the next warbands and things too. So
yeah. So one of the comments was, so like fighting, if you want to go hunt a monster, according to the preview, you have to meet a certain level of dominating territory. Mm-hmm. And so once you've kind of proven your warbands at a certain level, you can go off and fight that war hydra or whatever. But if you fail, you risk losing those territories. Nice. So there's some risk reward in here, which feels really cool. And I just think that like you said, I feel like there's some game balancing things that happen in there, right? League balancing. You've got Josh here needs to fight a monster and get his butt whooped, so he's going to come down to our level again. But no, I mean it's just cool stuff. So
I had a quick thought. There's an interesting thing. Just the title of the book, Mercenaries and Monsters, right? Warcry itself definitely feels like a narrative game. You've got your 6 Chaos Warbands that are kind of your prototypical characters, and then you have the 9 non-Chaos Warbands that really allow you to kind of bring in AOS into it. But I think, especially because they took Warcry and they titled it Mercenaries and Monsters, it just resonates a lot with me with like the old Dungeons and Dragons books, right? Like, so this is almost like a monster manual, that we have these narratives that we can have and these new monsters that we can pull out, new challenges. And especially with these Warcry progression charts that we have, where you can move to a convergence, you conquer territory, it definitely scratches an itch for me that D&D did, where you have a character sheet, your characters level up, you gain special items, right? But you have your one leader that's moving everything forward. And what Mercenaries and Monsters really does, it I think allows you to be like, I actually defeated, a chimera. How amazing is that? Like, it starts to give you these awesome stories that will be kind of touchstones, I think, going forward for, well, can you tell me about your warband? Oh, well, I did this and I did that, right? And it's a really cool way of developing the narrative while also giving people a lot of different ways to play. But Eric, a lot of this is reminding me of the way that you ran the campaign when we did Skirmish, a couple of years ago, where you were saying, hey, this is what we're doing, and I'm going to throw stuff at you, and we're going to try and figure out challenge ratings and all this kind of stuff. So I'm super excited for just the possibilities that exist and the direction they seem to be taking with the design at this point.
Yeah. No, I think it's real cool. Yeah, one of the campaign set, Renown and Ruin, was basically if you took on a challenge from an NPC, you would wager some of your renown. Yeah. And so you could decide like how much you wanted to be known for doing this deed. And if you took it on and if you succeeded, you'd basically double it, you'd double that wager, or you'd win that on top. If you failed, you'd lose that. So it also gave the player the ability to be kind of really brazen about it and take big leaps and take big risks. And depending on what they kind of wagered, it would depend on maybe the challenge of the thing. So yeah, I mean, I like this element of risk that's coming into it, because other than losing fighter that has an artifact or destiny, if you lose somebody, there's not a huge risk there. You lose some of those fun things. That being said, you add more options for your roster. You add more kind of risk to your roster. Now that your roster building and you're swapping out models, or adding and removing from your roster becomes more tricky. It's pretty cool. We'll definitely cover the once we get the book in hand, we have a chance to work in it, probably play some games. I think we like to have some games under our belt before we get too detailed in our review of rules or whatever. But we'll have that coming in a future episode. Well, why don't we take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about our main topic, which is how do we get new players to their first 1,000-point warband, the cheapest, the fastest, the easiest, so that we can suck them in and get them playing more games, etc. How's that sound, guys?
Awesome.
So we're trying something a bit different by debuting this new podcast, Dogs of Warcry, on the Mortal Realms stream. We hope you're enjoying this and our Warcry coverage overall, or at least happy for us that we found something that we're as passionate about as AOS lore. Can't you just be happy for us? We won't be doing Dogs of Warcry on this stream for much longer, so if you need more, search for Dogs of Warcry on iTunes so you can listen to it on its own stream on your favorite podcast app. Now get along, little doggy. All right. Welcome back. Now, we wanted to use this episode, the second episode, to create as wide of an opening, a gateway, a door, a realm gate, whatever, for new players getting into Warcry and kind of navigating all the options that are available, whether that be the starter set, the Chaos Warbands that are brand new and released with the game, or any of the warbands that are made up of non-chaos that may use existing models or stuff that is on the shelves at your Games Workshop or local game store, because it's not the easiest to navigate. And even the our first night out at League, we had new players checking it out and asking that question. Well, how do I get? What do I buy? What appeals to me? And then how do I get into it? What's the best thing to buy? And in some cases, it can be, depending on what you like, it can be a very simple question, and sometimes it can be a little more complex. The place I want to start is I did put this question out on Twitter. What have you recommended to friends who are interested in Warcry? And specifically, the poll was, do you recommend the starter set because of its value, the Chaos Warbands because they're so themey, or recommend non-chaos because it's something they already own, or there's just those options available. But the starter set was the number one recommendation at 43% because of the value that you get out of that starter box. Now, then close second at 38% was the non-chaos warbands, possibly again because people already own those, or they have some models that they can already get started with, and so that can be an easy kind of, if they've got the models, there's no risk in playing with them and trying Warcry out. And then third was the Chaos Warbands. And I'm sure some of that may come down to, sitting on the fence or which ones you like, or just the number of options there are compared to the non-Chaos. Does any of that surprise you guys in those results?
No, I think that probably falls into line with what I was expecting, just because, and I think I voted the starter set because you get 2 warbands, all the terrain, the tokens, it's a really good deal. And certainly, as I had mentioned in the first podcast, is my main Age of Sigmar armies, Kahadran Overlords, and had they had a warband, availability for that, I probably would have started with that rather than getting into Chaos. So I think both of those are kind of in line with what I would be thinking too. So
yeah, I would say I started with the Chaos, but I started with the starter set, which is, kind of falls in line with that too. I had other warbands that or other models from existing sets that I could use, but then I, kind of chose to get into the Untamed Beast. Well, let's start with the starter set, and let's talk about this value. Payvand, what did you think about that breakdown? What was your initial decision getting into Warcry?
So the breakdown, I don't know what my expectation was, but the starter set is designed to get people into the game, and it's certainly the best value, and especially if you have like 2 friends or 2 brothers or 2 sisters that all want to get into the game, it's like really a great way to go because you get everything you need and it's all in the box, and it's like got great terrain, it's got great minis. So I can see why that is the number one recommendation. Beyond that, I guess we'll have to keep listeners sit tight, and we'll get you you everything else, all the other information.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so here's what you get in the starter set. Obviously, the starter set is about $170 retail. You can find some other deals on that with your local game store or etc. But inside of it, you get the rules, which are a $50 value. You get 2 warbands, which are a $100 value. the Chaos Beasts, which are a $45 value, Terrain, which is magnificent terrain, and I hope at some point that comes out as a Ravaged Land. It's a fantastic value, around $95. You get the battle plan cards for each warband, for the battle plan cards, it's the 4 decks of cards, which is a $24 value. Tokens, I guess you probably heard me say I can take or leave those. I have other means. But it's around over $300 worth of kits and content inside that $170 huge heavy box. If you've got nothing, if you're starting from scratch, it's absolutely worth that value, and it's a great place to go. But what if I wanted to just get started and I wasn't ready to do the starter set? What do I need? Paul, what would be the first thing that you would say is a must get?
Well, the rules, right? I mean, the basic framework that allows you to use these models in a different game, super important and super useful. And not to mention that you don't just get the rules, you also get all these campaigns and everything else that's included in it. So that would definitely be my first buy, and it was my first buy for sure.
Cool. So the core rule book is $50. You can actually get it digitally for $35 if you prefer an iPad or another digital method. So there's a real easy way to get in there if you like going that route. What else would you, Josh, where would you go next?
Well, I think definitely after that point, you would have to go with, whatever warband you decided to pick up. So whether it's you're buying a box of one of the chaos boxes that are out there, would come with all the cards in it, or whether you're buying one of the $9-ish packs for the existing AOS armies, because then you'll need to figure out, okay, what can my guys do? And then, you'll go from there.
We'll talk about the warbands in a minute, but yeah, getting that next warband, whatever that warband is you want to play with. And your options is either buy something new or use existing models. I was amazed at the number of options they came out with out of the gate. I think it just seems like there's an entry point for almost everybody. Like you said, your KO weren't represented, so there's not every army has a entry point, but hopefully that'll come in time. Payvand, you're working on the Loon Shrine as a terrain option for Warcry. Where would you go next with terrain? What would you be looking at?
Well, if you're just a novice and you're just trying to try it out and you want to get in with like a smaller investment, I would say the first thing you should do with regards to terrain is just go to your local game store and use the terrain they have and just set it up in a way that you think is cool and just play on that. If you have the rule book and you have minis, I think that's all you actually need. Now, going beyond that, and maybe you want to play at home, maybe you just want to collect your own stuff. There's a lot of good options. I think the first one you want to look at is the Ravaged Land sets, which are built specifically for Warcry. So they give you lots of pieces that have a cohesive theme around them, and they give you the decks for randomly generating different battlefields that you'd want to play with your warbands are. And I think you also get the fold-out mat to play on as well. So that's the coolest. That's I would say the next investment, and I'm very excited on investing there next. So I have my own little set I can play at my house. On top of that, you can of course start roping in all of the other Age of Sigmar terrain or your own custom built terrain.
Absolutely. I had the Azurite Ruins has a small set where at the very least, if you're playing on the battle mat level, the ground level, you can have ruins and stuff to kind of block you. If you wanted to start collecting your own terrain, the Azurite Township has that second level and makes up quite a bit of the Defiled Ruins set that's coming out. But that Azurite Township, if it's still available for $55, is a really good deal for kind of the terrain that you get into it, you get with it. But yeah, they keep putting out these Ravaged Lands, which are these nice little kind of a full table of terrain, which is, again, being able to just pick up one item and get it in there if once you bought in and you're ready to go. But I mean, wargaming has a history of using kind of found objects and things in your house or kind of do-it-yourself stuff. Josh, you do a ton of kind of your own building of things. For someone who maybe hasn't done that before, do you have any tips for what they would do with terrain at home?
Yeah, I guess my biggest recommendation would be use your imagination. I mean, I remember some of the very first Games Workshop books come out, Rogue Trader and everything else. They would put books underneath, a piece of cloth to represent hills. I mean,
Yep.
you can go as basic as you want and still have a lot of fun. And even, when I was growing up, my brother and I would take models outside and play in the dirt, on moss and trees, so you can definitely use your imagination. You can, there's all sorts of styrofoam or box fillings and all sorts of things that you can kind of use to represent that, terrarium terrain. And, you go to the pet store, pick up, the craft store has got tons of vegetation that's usually really cheap. Lots of options.
Yeah. My son has a Batman Hot Wheels set that has like ramps and platforms. I feel like if I've got something like that laying around, it could be easy enough to put that on a table and just use it and just imagine it as something different.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think the movement rules for Warcry really invite you into imagining a lot of things, right? The movement rules are, as Sam has talked about, very much based on parkour. And out of all the GW games that have been released so far, I think this is definitely the game where, like you were saying, Josh, you put books underneath a carpet, right? And that becomes a hill.
Mm-hmm.
But in AOS, that becomes a hill, and you've got to work on the movement and go up here, and then maybe you can do this thing, right? But in Warcry, that becomes an objective, right? That becomes a useful piece of terrain to be able to move on to it. So even just, stacking the boxes you got from your set, or Shadespire or whatever, right? Like the box you got for your starter set for AOS, all those boxes actually provide a new depth of play for those rules because these movement rules are so flexible. Now, you get to the point where you're like, this is super fun, and I really want to do this. The amazing thing of having these $90 sets that fill the 22 by 30 board and really are evocative of what you're doing is just kind of an amazing situation that we've never really encountered before. I mean, the possibility of getting into a whole game for, under $200 and you have all these rules, it kind of blows the mind. So for terrain especially, it's amazing what you can do with such little stuff.
Absolutely. Now, you can take it further, and I know we talked a bit. Paul's got the Gibbering Dome, which is, kind of this many 4x6 boards worth of kind of terrain and elevation. Josh is building, custom stuff and kind of putting styrofoam and plastic stuff and hobby stuff from Halloween and there's tons of things to find and put it together. And what is cool is if you are interested in that sort of thing, if you are creative, if you are like crafting or doing those sorts of things, the table size is small enough, the kind of detail of the world that we're playing in is evocative enough that you can create your own space. It doesn't have to be just the stuff from the store. If that's a challenge you want to take on, there's room to grow into that. But there's a ton of great entry level, easy to put together kinds of things that just push the kind of immersion to the limit. So it's pretty exciting all around. Let's move on to the tokens. Is an aspect that's only in the starter set at the moment.
Eric, real quick, they actually, I didn't mention this, they come in all the Ravaged Lands boxes. You get your own set of tokens.
Oh, that's fantastic. So each of the Ravaged Lands comes with some tokens. But if, again, you're using your own terrain that you already have or kind of found objects, etc., you don't necessarily need the tokens to be able to use the game. You could use coins or other kind of small pieces or things for objectives. Often, if you've played some games, you have some sort of objective token or something, or like I said, a coin. You will need some 6-sided dice, some D6s, as well as I use the polyhedral dice for some of my models' wounds. So if I've got my Heart Taker or Heart Eater is 20 wounds, I'll get a 20-sided dice, and I'll use that to count up how many wounds has been dealt to them. Same with my, so I just use that side of dice for wounds. Josh, you've been in the 3D printing world. We mentioned this last time. How fast has the community kind of come to the aid of gamers with that sort of stuff, custom tokens, etc.?
Yeah, no, it's been quite impressive, and even MDF or the laser cutting and things like that. People have come up with a wide range of trays, for holding your dice or for holding your cards, or a combination of the two. People have come up with wound counters. They've come up with the dagger, shield, hammer tokens, so you can kind of put those out, represent your groups. People even come with 3D printed kind of like a base attachment to represent by color, whether it's in the dagger, shield, or hammer, so that in those missions where you have to kill the dagger, you can easily identify the models that are part of that group. So yeah, it keeps growing, and it's amazing how fast it's been.
That's awesome. So there are third-party ways of trusted vendors for that sort of thing to find, and then so. Or you can pick up, there's options for that, alternatives and ways of going about it. At first, I thought once you pick up the book, then pick up the battle plan cards. On one hand, it's a pretty amazing mechanic that has come to define Warcry in many ways, meaning that our experiences are being built by these, 4 decks of cards. However, I kind of, after thinking about it, marked them as an optional buy. We've had some things like this, open war cards for both Age of Sigmar and 40,000. But this sets up your terrain, it sets up your win condition, it sends up the twist, your deployment and positioning, and it's unique to Warcry, this intensive. And so you can buy the battle plan card set for $24. It doesn't come with the terrain deck, so it comes with the 3 decks, the deployment, the victory condition, and the twist. Which is fine. Again, I've mentioned in the last episode that I could do without the terrain deck. I'm fine setting this stuff up on my own, but it's also been really cool to have that as a default that everyone can kind of just say, hey, we're going to flip that card. That being said, the main book has a lot of those things for you. They have different terrain layouts. They have different deployment maps. They have victory conditions and they have twists. Or they have something called hidden agendas in the triumphant treachery section. And so there's the book between the match play section, the open play and the narrative section. They have a lot of these elements that you can play with right away. So the battle plan cards, while cool and have definitely defined playing Warcry for those who bought the starter set or went in our leagues, etc., they are an optional. They don't have to be the very first kind of purchase that you make. Would you guys recommend that being a future purchase?
I have to say, I did buy the rulebook myself first, and then I did pick up the battle plan cards, just for the simple fact that the deployment, victory condition, and twist are on separate pages, and they're, of course, 2-page layouts. And so you can't look at all 3 of them at the same time while you're playing the game. And it was much easier to just lay out the cards to be able to see everything that you were doing at all times. So for me, it was something that definitely benefited my play experience.
What were you thinking, Josh?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I find it's convenient to have the decks just because it's all there in one place. You don't have to worry about making copies, cutting it out, using it however you want, although you didn't necessarily have to do that. The page-by-page layout in the book kind of works because you're supposed to kind of set up your units first, and then you do the terrain, and then you go to the next step. So, having them separate, I think, is okay. But again, it's more of a convenience and in some cases, speed of play. Just having the cards separately, I found it easier that way.
Great observations. I think both of them are fantastic. So, as a recap of this, the starter set is a fantastic value. I don't think you can go wrong with that unless you only have $160 and you overdraft your account doing this. So in lieu of that,
Could be right.
What's that?
It still could be the right choice.
Oh, absolutely.
But if you're gonna want to jump in at this from a different angle, then the core book gives you a ton of rules and alternatives, tons of ways to play narratively, match play, etc. You're going to want to pick up some dice, but dice are everywhere, so that's easy. You've got a ruler or measuring tool at home, probably. You're can start with some terrain that you already have or some found stuff, but there's some fantastic, easy options for getting started with terrain. And then there's the miniatures, which is hopefully and likely the fun part that you wanted to get into when picking up this game, having these little fighters jumping all around the battlefield. All right, now that we've kind of showed you what are the options for the starter set getting started or alternatives, kind of piecing this together in another route, let's start talking about the warbands. We're going to start with the chaos, your options in the chaos round, your options with the chaos warbands. And this is what's nice about this. It is fairly straightforward. There's on launch, Games Workshop put out 6 warbands, and we know that there are 2 more coming in the wings. We know their names, but we haven't gotten any releases on them yet. So we've got the Corvus Cabal, Cypher Lords, Iron Golems, the Splintered Fang, the Unmade, and the Untamed Beasts, and then the Scions of the Flame and the Spire Tyrants. Now, the Spire Tyrants and the Scions of the Flame don't have models yet. They are going to be coming out soon, within the year, or within the next 6 months, I would imagine, if not before the end of the year. But we have the 6 warbands that are available now. And each of these warbands come in a box, a $50 box. And that box generally has close to 1,000 points for playing a game of Warcry. Now, 1,000 points is what the game says is kind of your base level to play. That you can play with less, but if you're going to play in a campaign or if you're going to play with friends, 2 1,000-point warbands is recommended, and each of these boxes has that. So the first thing you might do if you're interested in the chaos is look at what your flavor is. So each of them has a little bit different flavor. We're not going to go over that flavor here. You heard us talk a little bit about that in the last episode, and we'll be talking even more about kind of what each of them kind of feels like on the table, or what their background and story is. Again, if you listen to our anthology episode of the Mortal Realms, you'll get a lot of flavor in each of these warbands and find something you're interested in. So if you're interested in kind of getting in quick and easy, there's not much easier than one of these warbands. What has, Paul, you went with Corvus Cabal. Josh, Cypher Lords were for you. I went Untamed Beasts. What would be your kind of recommendation on why somebody should start with, if they're interested in chaos, why would they start with one of these warbands?
Well, I think the real basic point is that if you are to liken this to a card game or a board game or something like that, the Chaos Warbands are basically the Warcry equivalent of a pre-made deck. They include 1,000 points, they include all the rules that you have, and they include something that's going to be cohesive and play well on the table together. And for me, that's a really compelling reason to pick up the box from a rules perspective. But the other thing that I super appreciate is that from an aesthetics perspective, these are all new entrances into the Age of Sigmar lore and into the Age of Sigmar design space. And that was something that super excited me, and particularly the Corvus Cabal. So if you really like the design aesthetic of Warcry and you want to immerse yourself in it, one of these box sets is going to be a great buy.
Yeah, I have to echo what Paul said, and just the unique models they have and the lore and the introduction into the Chaos 8 points and how that actually looks and how these warbands interact there is definitely a really interesting narrative hook.
Absolutely. If you want to get immersed in the story of Warcry, and I think that, the uniqueness that these are all brand new kind of models made for this, and each of these warbands, when you buy that box, you get a variety of fighter types. You get less skilled fighters all the way up to a leader for each of these. And so everything you need is in the box, and you get a lot of different variety to play with. Now, when you talk about expanding beyond that 1,000 points, you get a second box, and you've got basically 2 of every model that you have in the first box. what are some of the kind of positives and negatives? Payvand, do you have any thoughts on kind of why that could work or why that might be difficult?
Well, one of the reasons it could work is a lot of these guys have like multiple builds you can use. So you can, so although you'll have the same kind of sprue you can build different minis from them. So that's a great way to add more variety and more kind of choices to your warbands. And something I kind of wanted to add, just to kind of put this whole discussion in context. Now I'm not a chaos player, but that I think you should always choose the minis you like the look of the most. So like no matter like what kind of thing you choose, just like pick the minis you like the most. Like GW does a good job supporting them. So if you like any of these Chaos Warbands, it's such a nice box. It's such a nice place to start. It has everything you need. It's like kind of designed for the Warcry aesthetic. But yeah, I'm very positive.
No, I definitely agree with the pick the one you like, and it's nice that they came out with the variety. Each one is so different from the others. I have trouble seeing any of these kind of like overlapping, kind of playing each other's space too much. Have you run into so I bought a second box of the Untamed Beasts, and there is kind of a gap where your warband can only have one leader, or your roster when you're playing campaigns can only have one leader. So that may not matter in a more open play kind of style, but so I have a second leader that maybe I don't need because it's the same leader. But there's definitely ways to kind of tweak or change or do some weapon swaps or kind of move those things around, or painting them slightly different. So you've got one that's kind of, if you got two beast speakers, one is the more prominent one, and the other is kind of the underling, etc. But then they're very what you see is what you get. These are tied very closely to the the fighter cards, etc. Any other kind of pros or cons to getting started with each of these $50 boxes?
I'll just chime in and say, from a tactical position, I ended up getting a second box just because when I kind of done a test game, and the Cypher Lords, they all generally have 10 wounds. The leader and the champion have a little bit more, but they're fairly squishy. Normally toughness 3. So one of the things I learned in my first test game with them is that hey, these 2-inch range weapons are kind of nice. I can attack but not be engaged, and gives me more flexibility. So I bought a second box so I could build more models that had a 2-inch range for my starting warband. Still was less than 1,000 points, but I just felt for me it gave me a little bit more tactical flexibility and more survivability in playing that warband.
Yeah.
Well, and then,
yep.
I think one of the other potential pros or potential cons is that these kits, if you haven't played in a while, they're not I'm going to put a pair of pants on a torso and put a left arm and put a right arm and put a head on. They're not quite push fit, but they are designed in a manner where this piece goes in this specific way. And you put it in this specific place. So if you're buying two and thinking, it's going to be super easy to convert it from here to there, well, it's not necessarily going to be the truth. Them should really work simple, easy with like cutting off a wrist and gluing a different wrist on instead to get some cool different things. But especially looking at the Shrike Talon and the Spire Hunter, Spire Stalkers, there's going to be some like serious thinking to decide where to cut, where to move it, and be able to get some of those different positions. So it is going to be a job to convert a second box to not be identical to the first, if that's important to you.
If that's important,
Yep.
Yeah, I think because they're so unique. If you are into converting, or if you're into using other models in your range, etc., there's some people that have been able to come up with some creative counts as armies, meaning that there's something that looks and feels a lot like the Untamed Beasts have an ethos. It's very much like the Beasts of Chaos in Age of Sigmar. And so maybe somebody has said, hey, I've got these models. Can I use them as Untamed Beasts? And that could work. that's more than maybe what we can cover on this podcast, whether they are good or fit or not, because that becomes a more complex kind of walkthrough of what models are available. But one of the kind of first things I looked at for Untamed Beast was the Godsworn Hunt box from Underworlds. And out of the box initially, maybe a couple of those work for Plains Runners. But I have incorporated them, but with very heavy conversions to be able to get them to fit into kind of fit the specific roles that the Untamed Beasts have available, right? Or have similar weapons that make them WYSIWYG for the what's on the cards. So it's not for the faint of the heart. There isn't a lot of immediate, very clear options to go and just add stuff from other ranges. So they're both very succinct visual styles, and unique and creative. And I think that's why if you want chaos and you can find one of these that you like, that's the added bonus, is that they're so unique and so special. And you have everything you need to play the game and get interesting and kind of fun to play experiences with that variety. Any other comments on that before we go to the non-chaos options?
The only kind of incidental thing is that all of these $50 box chaos warbands are going to have 2 campaigns that you can play through instead of just one for the non-chaos, if that's a concern for you. Yeah.
And who knows, these they may come out with expansions or single models or other leaders that come out for these warbands. And so I think moving forward, if they come out with special models for Warcry, they're primarily going to fit the chaos warbands that they've come out with. But who knows? They have surprised us before. They could surprise us again. All right. Now, the non-chaos has quite a few other options, and often it's a little bit more complex to jump in that direction. So we're going to take a quick break, gather our thoughts, and we'll be right back to explore all the non-chaos warbands and your entry point into Warcry.
Hey, what are you doing this far out, alone, in the Bloodwind Spoils? Well, I'm out here tracking a new hatching of Raptorix. A bit meaner when they're chicks, but dang if they ain't the tastiest thing this side of Karngrad. No, I don't get out this way often. Well, yeah, we move around a lot, but we always make our way back to the Mortal Realms Discord channel. We share our tips and tricks for staying alive in the Bloodwind Spoils, and we share whip picks as we're fashioning new instruments of death and mayhem. Hey, you should come by and check out camp. I swear, no one will eat you the first day. Oh, I think I hear those Raptorix chicks. I'd share the find, but I think I've already done you one solid for today. May Archaon notice ya, if he doesn't see me first.
All right, welcome back. It is time for us to jump into kind of the alternate way of getting into Warcry, and that's through some of the non-chaos warbands. And the reason that we're entering into this with a little bit more, caution, is because each of these different warbands that are available have different options to get in. There isn't just one box that gets you every model or every fighter in the Gloomspite warband, right? And so the kind of 3 ways that we want to think about this again is what might be the cheapest way to get in, meaning you're spending the fewest dollars to get this warband on the table at 1,000 points, because 1,000 points is the kind of our goal to start with. What is the easiest, which may mean either, it's the fewest number of models, which that also might be the fastest way to get a warband on the table. And the last might be, what is the value option, if there's a value option for kind of getting you the most kinds of things, most variety. So we're going to start in Destruction, in the faction of Destruction. And there we've got the Bone Splitters, the Iron Jaws, and the Gloomspite Gits. Paul, why don't you kick us off with the Bone Splitters, which is the the antithesis of everything I just said.
So the Bone Splitters, you just get one Savage Oryx box. It's gonna get you everything that you could possibly need for the Warband because everything is in there. The Big Stabbers, which is something that would be useful in AOS, there's 2 of them in the box, and conveniently, that's super useful. 2 totems, and then you have a whole bunch more models that you can use for More Boys or for Arrow Boys. So this is the straightforward non-chaos entry into Warcry. You're paying $50 for the box and then $8 for the cards, and there you go. You got a full warband, and you're going to have a lot of things that you can manipulate and change as you're playing along.
Yeah, it's almost 2,300 points of models in Warcry, so it'll get you past your first 1,000 and then into some. Are there any other thoughts that you guys have on Bone Splitters, recommendations, or kind of left field ideas? I didn't think so. Bone Splitters are super straightforward. They're a fantastic character army, and it's of the non-chaos warbands, it's probably the easiest choice to jump into. Payvand, Iron Jaws, go.
All right, so you're interested in Iron Jaws. You're really excited about that new Iron Jaws AOS book coming out, and you want to get into Warcry. There's 2 kind of very close to cheapest option. One that's a little bit better bang for your buck is the to get you to 1,000 points, you can get the Ard Boys box. That will be $53, but it will get you like 20 models, which is going to net you around 2,500 points. So probably more than you'll need. You got the leader in there. You have 19 other fighters on top of that. You have different weapon options. So that's a really great value. If you just get the Brutes box, that will get you not quite 1,000 points. It gets you to 995, I think.
Which is pretty close to like what the chaos warbands kind of get you to around there. Mm-hmm. But then you're just putting 4 models on the table?
You get to put the whole box on the table, so you get to put the 5 models on there.
Nice.
And they're real tough, but you don't have as many activations. If you want to have like the recommendation maybe is you get the Brutes box, and then you get the Warhammer Underworld's Iron Skulls Boys box. And that's for an extra $25. You get that box. That comes with 4 very characterful, very cool Ard Boys to mix in with your Brutes. So you have like the big dudes, and you have the even bigger dudes to give some different scale. It gives you like almost every option you have in the Warband, and is just a great collection of minis to have. So recap: cheapest is the Ard Boys box. But the recommendation is the Brutes box plus the Iron Skulls Boys if you want to like have a nice difference of miniatures and have like a nice warband to choose from.
Absolutely. Any other left field ideas or alternatives that you guys can think of for Iron Jaws? Awesome. Payvand, why don't you keep the train running with the Gloomspite gets?
I'm jealous.
If you'd picked them first and painted them first.
I know. Just saying I'm jealous. That's all.
Oh yeah, I got my name in the Google Doc real fast. So yeah, for Gloomspite Gits, you have a number of options. You have a number of kits to choose from. They actually have a really great selection of miniatures available to play in Warcry. The cheapest box is the box of 20 Stabbas/Shootas. This will give you a leader, which is the unit champion, and then 19 other fighters, which you can equip with spears, which you can equip with one-hand weapons, and then with bow and arrows as well to be the Shootas. This will net you 1,330 points maximum, and it's $35. So great value. Got a lot of different stuff to work with. You're just going to flood the board with a lot of cheap goblins, which is like a fun, narrative fantasy to fulfill. The next cheapest auction is for $45. You can get the Squig Herd box. This has 12 models in it. It'll get you 1,500 points, a little higher than that. You get 10 squigs, which are very good in the game. They're fun. They munch stuff up, and they're just balls of teeth and muscle. Then you get 2 squig herders. I think you could probably use one as the leader pretty safely, and then just the other herder. That's $45. That's going to be another way to get your whole warband in one box. If you want to go for a low model count option, you can get the Boingrot Bounders / Squig Hoppers box for $50. These are like very strong models because they're kind of cavalry. They're very fast. They're very fun. They have that'll be $50, and you can get up to 2,000 over 2,000 points with everything that's just in the box. They give you 10 models, and then you can build those in a combination of hoppers and bounders, and you can have both of the champions of those different units you can use as leaders. Kind of an honorable mention here is the box of Underworld Zarg Bags Gits for $25. It doesn't quite come with like 600 points, but you get a nice selection to add on top of what you already have. You have 3 shooters in there, you have 2 squigs, you have a squig herder, and you got a netta. These are all can be used in Warcry. In addition to that, you have a fanatic, which doesn't have rules yet, and you have a shaman, which may-ish have rules in with mercenaries and monsters coming out. So that's a cool like kind of set of miniatures to kind of just add on top, but it won't get you all the way there by itself.
That one seems like a good one if you go with the Boingrot Bounders route and you want to add some variety with, stabbers, shooters, and just squigs. That just kind of rounds you out a little bit. It gives you some more things to play with if you don't want to just be low model count Boingrots. So,
I agree completely.
So it is cool that the Gits have a number of options where they have single boxes that can get you playing. And then the question is, how do you get some variety after that once you're ready to kind of up your game, etc.
Beach.
So now let's go with Death. And Death came out with has some pretty cool variety as well. Whereas, the Gits are all Gits. The Death have the Flesh Eater Courts. They have the Night Flesh Eater Courts, which are kind of cannibalistic, crazy people. The Night Haunt, which are ghosts, and then the Legion of Gash, which is skeletons, etc. Josh, why don't you kick us off with the Flesh Eater Courts? What are our options there?
Definitely. And one thing I just want to point out for people who may not be familiar is if you're playing the campaign narrative storylines, you'll eventually get to dominate 6 territories, which give you 50 extra points per territory. So the most that you would play in Warcry at this point in time would be 1,300 points. So we're kind of talking about how many points are in each box and everything else, but 1,300 points is really the maximum that you would play in the current Warcry campaign scenarios. So just kind of tailor
Can you spend an additional 3 glory point to add another 100 on top of that?
It's true, actually you can, yeah. So you can temporarily, for a game, spend 1 for 50 or 3 for 100. So I guess it could get up to 1,400, yeah.
And if you're nice to your event organizer, you might get more.
Yeah. And I'm going to stick my foot in there and say, but you can also field 20 models in your narrative warband. So points don't matter with those 20 models, right?
15 on the table, though.
You're absolutely right, but you could field 15 in one game, and then you could switch 5 of them out and field a different 15 in the next one. So Correct. There is some tactical flexibility that you can get with going that route as well. So
correct, yeah. In terms of the points and whether you have higher level point models versus lower point models, the combination thereof, definitely.
As I was mentioning, I've got 26 models in my Untamed Beasts collection. I can't put them all on a roster, but it's fun to collect them.
Definitely.
Josh, why don't you get us into these cannibals?
Definitely. So just to get a Warcry warband, the cheapest way is you can just get a box of ghouls. You can definitely play a warband with just ghouls. The box comes with, $40, and you get 10 or 20 models. That is, so you get a leader. You've got lots of additional ghouls to convert or play however you want, and that'll definitely get you 1,000 points, a little bit above that. If you want some of the harder hitters, and a lot of people tend to be playing with crypt players or horrors, the haunted and infernals. then you'll definitely at least need one box of Crypt Flayers, which would be about $50 or so. So that would be an add-on, or if you just wanted to try and play with a few models in larger and just a few of the large models, you might just go with 2 of those boxes. But personally, I think your best bang for the buck overall is the getting started box, and I think this is probably the only getting started box that kind of gives you a little of everything. You get 10 ghouls, you get 3 crypt horrors or flayers, which is generally what people are running, and then additionally you get a zombie dragon or Terrorgeist, which you can use in the upcoming expansion, monsters and mercenaries. So I think for the $90, that is an excellent deal to kind of get a great well-rounded warband and a monster that you can use in the future expansions.
Absolutely. And I was hoping that so you can get one box of 3 crypt flayers or horrors for $50, but it's only about 700, 800 points. So it's quite a bit more shy of that 1,000 points. So you do have to go to a second box if you wanted to do all flayers or horrors. So if you're going to spend $100 on those bigger models, that start collecting box is a pretty sweet kind of deal on that. Paul, why don't you jump into some ghosts?
The Night Haunt are going to be the cheapest option. Is going to be a box of the easy to build Chain Rasp Horde plus a box of the easy to build Glaive Wraith Stalkers. So if you buy that, you're going to get 1 leader, 9 Chain Rasps, and 4 Glaive Wraiths. So that's going to easily get you enough to be playing well. If you kind of want to go a little bit more into it, the easiest thing to build is going to be bang a box of Grimghast Reapers and a leader and 9 fighters out of that. So you're going to have a little bit more flexibility, and they're going to be probably a little bit better fighters than those Chain Rasps. Then you can also add on a box of Spirit Hosts, which is going to be $26 and 660 points. So that's going to add a little bit more flexibility. They're a little bit tougher, if I'm not mistaken. And then if you just want value, you can buy the Tempest of Soul starter box. So you can get 10 Chain Rasps, 4 Grimghast, 5 Glaive Wraith Stalkers, plus a bunch of Stormcast that are not usable in Warcry yet. But hopefully they'll show up in the future. And, you could also just trade it to a friend and see if you can get some more Nighthound for that. So that would work out pretty well as well.
I wouldn't say go out and buy Tempest's Soul just to get Night Haunt, but if you have it, it's an easy one to get started with. You have quite a few things for Warcry. Those easy to build is a nice way to get in, and those are going to be push fit, which is really cool if you've not built miniatures before.
Right.
I also have a guilty confession. I literally did buy the Tempest of Soul starter box twice just for the Night Haunt, and then ended up with another Stormcast army because of it. So it's not recommended, but you can do it.
And like you said, there's value. If you're interested in those models as well or want to split them, you can go that route and be able to double use them. Josh, Legions of Nagash, Ben is running this. What are our options if we want skeletons and necromantic magic users?
No, definitely. So the great start is the necromancers are available out there. You can buy that as a pack, and that also there's a wide range of models that you can use as a necromancer, which is wonderful. And then for your skeleton guys, you can really go with a box of skeleton warriors, which will net you 20 fighters for $45 and over 1,000 points. And you can use those as skeletons, or you can convert them to make some of them Graveguard as well. The other option, of course, is to get the box of Graveguard, which is a little bit more. It's at $57, a little over 1,000 points. And then the Graveguard, you can also, if you don't use some of the armor, if you modified it, you could use them as generic skeletons or give them spears. But it's nice because either one of those boxes, you can either use them as models or kind of use them as one or the other as well. The Graveguard box, you only get 10 models. Most Legions of Nagash armies are going to have a minimum of 10. So, getting the skeleton box would be probably the cheapest, fastest way to get you 10 plus models, and along with the necromancer. And then, of course, if you have any additional, the Sepulchral Guard box has got some really awesome looking skeleton models, which you can use for a variety of the heroes, like the Skeleton Champion. You could definitely see him using from that box, and that's $25. Just adds additional flavor to the units, but it's not necessary.
Yep. It's that This is the only warband that has a hero model from Age of Sigmar as its kind of one of its core. And the Necromancer uses magic and is all cool. And then, yeah, that $30 skeleton box plus the $15 Necromancer, or if you use another model as a Necromancer, like anybody can turn into the dark arts and learn to raise skeletons.
And one thing to add to that I forgot is that the Games Workshop has a web-only purchase where you can spend $10 to get 5 skeletons. I mean, they're the old kind of classic standalone, but in that sense, you could say, oh, okay, I'm going to get the Graveguard box because I could make my Graveguard the way I want, and then I can pay $10 for these 5 skeletons just to get those extra spearmen or whatever I want. So
there you go. So a nice add-on if you go the Graveguard route.
Right.
All right, let's jump to the order category. In the order category, we have Stormcast, we have Ideneth, and we have Daughters of Cain. So let's go with the Stormcast. And there's a number of options. Obviously, the Stormcast has one Vanguard. The Vanguard chamber is what you use in Warcry. Down the road, I know in Monsters and Mercenaries, there's some additional kind of heroes from the Stormcast that are coming in. Maybe down the road, some of the Warrior Chamber or the Sacrosanct Chamber will be available. But the Vanguard are just really cool models. The very cheapest and easiest way to get your first 1,000 is actually the two first ways to get in the cheapest and maybe easiest are a little bit alternative. They may not be the most obvious. The first would be to get a box of easy-to-build castigators, which are kind of a crossbow. They have kind of a mortar-style crossbow, but could be easily used as a leader for the Raptor Prime, maybe with Hurricane or with the Long Strike, and 2 other Raptors, again, with crossbow-style weapons. And then if you can also pick up, I believe that's $15, and then a box of Gryph-hounds, which has 6 Gryph-hounds in it, for additional $25. You get, 9 models. It comes up to 1,780 points in Warcry, and is just some really cool poses and awesome models. Those castigators are real cool looking. The next kind of way to get in for 1,000 points, really easy, would to pick up Knave Black Talon as a Hunter Prime, and that's a fantastic sculpt and a cool box, and then add the box of 6 Gryph-hounds on top of that for $55, and that'll get you just over kind of 1,100 points. Again, you get these really cool models, about $50 or less, and you can get into the game really fast. Now, if you want more variety, now those both had some shooters. They had some that first option had the shooters and Gryph-hounds. The second option had a more close combat fighter and some Gryph-hounds. So if you wanted to add some Vanguard Hunters onto that first box with the castigators or with the crossbows, then the Underworld's Farstrider box for $25 would be a really cool option. You have an optional Vanguard Hunter Prime leader and 2 other Vanguard Hunters. So that's a cool option to add some more kind of more close combat or choppy guys. Another add-on, if you went with Knave Black Talon and the Gryph-hounds, is to a $35 box of the Vanguard Raptors. You get a potential leader either as a Long Strike or Hurricane. And then you get 2 other models that are carrying the crossbow styles. But then you also get 3 Aether Wing, which are a really fast, mobile unit. Maybe more mobile than the Gryph-hounds, but kind of some similar cool scopes for that. So you're adding about 865 points onto that. Again, you could do a number of combinations here. Another, I guess, maybe the easy way, if you wanted, but it would kind of be a mono build, is if you bought the Vanguard Hunters box for $60, then you're going to get 10 models. One of them can be a leader, 9 hunters, and they shoot, they chop, they move around the board, and that's about 1,700 points of Warcry models. So my preference is maybe you get started with kind of those cheap combinations, and then you add a little variety one way or the other. If you started with shooters, you add a few Vanguard Hunters. If you start with Hunters, you maybe add a few shooters. So that's my thinking. Any other kind of options out there that you guys have thought about, or one of those ways that you prefer?
Well, I'm just saying, if your friend bought Tempest of Souls just for the Night Haunt, and you wanted to go with the 3 easy build Castigators, those are included in the Stormcast half of Tempest of Souls. So you might be able to beg those off of him.
Nice. All right. Payvand, why don't you introduce us to the Ideneth Deepkin?
All right. Yeah. If you want to get started with the Ideneth Deepkin, there really is one easy and best and cheapest option, and that's going with the Start Collecting box. Now, this is going to give you everything you want or need. It comes with, it's going to be $90, so it's not a kind of a small, simple box to buy, but it comes with a really lot of great stuff to get you started. It comes with 10 Thralls, which are the foot troops. And then it comes with three Eel Riders, which are the Achillean Guard. There's 2 builds you can build with those, but you can build 3 of them. And then it comes with the Isharan Soul Render, which is a hero that will be an allied, that we think will be an allied unit for when the expansion comes out. A lot of cool stuff, really great value. The Start Collecting boxes are always good values, and it'll give you kind of more than you need to start your campaign and then grow your warband from there. Now, if you want to expand, once you have that box, or you just kind of want to hear the other options, now you can buy an individual box of Thrall for $50. Doesn't quite get you to 1,000 points, but comes with a leader and 9 fighters. You can buy a box of Namarti Reavers, which are the foot troops that have the bows. Another cool set of minis. A leader, 9 fighters. Still not quite 1,000. Then you can expand for another box of the Achillean Guard, which are the kind of eel knights that come from deep in the sea. This comes with 1 leader and then 2 fighters. And then you can build either the kind of the aggressive spear wielding groups, which are the Ishlian Guard. And then you can also buy build the more defensive ones, which are the Morsar Guard. An individual box isn't going to get you to, with the 3 models, isn't going to get you to 1,000 points. That's why still the best way to go, the best value is to start collecting Ideneth Deepkin box.
Absolutely. Now, if you didn't go that direction, your kind of options, you pick 2 of the other ones for $100. It'll get you those points, but you're kind of picking your options. So if you didn't want to go with eels, you could pick both of the foot troops or whatever to get more models on the table. But this is one of those cases where that Start Collecting adds a lot of value. And there aren't many other places to get the Deepkin. There aren't any extra boxes or Underworlds variants or anything like that. These are ones where an excuse to get a box of those Reavers with their super cool sculpts is very tempting. Why don't you finish off our kind of non-chaos warbands, Payvand, with the Daughters of Cain? What are our options there?
So the Daughters of Cain, the good thing is they have a lot of really cool models and a great selection of unit troops to use in Warcry. The bad news is there isn't a obvious one box to pick up for them that is going to get you all the way over 1,000 points. So we're kind of in a pick 2 scenario where you kind of pick your 2 favorite boxes out of 3, and that will get you a lot of different choices and will get you over that 1,000 point mark and that room to expand. So I'll just go through them in order. The first one is the Kinnerai, and this is the kind of harpy kind of sculpts. They are they have wings, they have tails, I think they have hooves. I don't have the minis in front of me right now. Very cool new sculpts. The box comes with 5 minis, and you can they're dual build, so you can get the Life Takers or the Heart Renders, and you have a leader of each. And so if you build the most expensive options, that will get you to 945 points. Similar is the Malusi, which are very similar both in name and in aesthetic to Medusae, but they are, women on top and snakes on the bottom, and they come with the Blood Sisters or Blood Stalkers dual kit again. 5 minis, 2 leader choices. I really like these minis. I really want to have them at one point, but if you build the most expensive option, you're going to get to 905 points. And then the last kind of box option for the faction is the dual kit Witch Elves Sisters of Slaughter box. It gets you 10 minis, gets you to 905 points, $60, 2 leader types, a few weapon options. So all these boxes are cool. All these boxes, the minis are great. They give you some options. None of it quite gets you over the top of the 1,000 points. So you just want to pick the 2 you love the most and start from there.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, we're looking for the easiest ways for people to get into these warbands. There's always options to trade with friends or see if anybody has a model here or there that you can use. If you both, 2 people went in on a couple of these boxes, you could split them and kind of get a little bit better deal. There's always, people selling online. That doesn't necessarily, it's not an easy way necessarily. With a little bit of extra work, you can find these things, maybe the right combo of things, but hopefully one of these kind of options to get into your favorite warband strikes a chord for you. And if you are sharing this with other people, if you have other people who are looking to get into this, hopefully you can give them some direction or some ideas this way. Now I'm going to turn the question to you guys after kind of doing this research, looking at kind of what the options were depending on the different kind of warband or thing you're interested in. Did it kind of spark an idea for what you wanted to get into next after you're done with this warband, or have you played through a campaign with this one? And did it change at all after, did you have something in mind and then it changed after kind of figuring out how you're going to getting into this, or kind of what's your story there? Josh, where you think you're going next, and did this influence it?
Well, that's definitely a great question. Of course, with any miniature game, it's always tempting looking at the wide range of options that you have ahead of you. But I'm really tied to the Cypher Lords at the moment. I think my biggest interest now lies in, okay, what's coming out in Monsters and Mercenaries, and having a range of monsters and maybe some heroes and stuff for narrative play in the campaign and multiplayer battles and that sort of thing. So I think that's kind of got my interest at the moment, rather than starting a new warband. But it certainly piqued my interest, and it's like, oh, okay, well, this isn't as hard as I thought it might be to pick up something else. So.
Absolutely. How about you, Payvand? After finishing up your Gloomspite warband, or having enough models to kind of have variety, your Loon Shrine, is there another warband or kind of combo of boxes that caught your eye?
Oh yeah. I'm always tempted by all miniatures at any point. I'm very strict with myself. I've always had the Idna Thiefkin in my pocket as something I really wanted to expand into. The Daughters of Cain are also a very cool set of minis. I don't think I would do a full Age of Sigmar army with them, so Warcry seems like a great way of getting into those kits I'm really interested in. Mm-hmm. Doing this research, what really stuck out to me is the Bone Splitters are very tempting in that it's such an easy entry point, gets you everything you need, it's all in that box. And I think they'll paint up super quick because it's all skin and it's all kind of natural materials. And so that's probably where that's where my mind is at today, but who knows?
Paul, what was there one that was on your mind before we kind of went through this list or researched this, and did that change at all?
I'm going to be doing the Legions of Nagash, and it didn't really change, but I was actually thinking of just using my old Tomb Kings bits to make my conversions, but I actually picked up a Sepulchral Guard, a second copy of that, and I'm going to see if I can make some interesting conversions to be able to use that instead. Because to me, one of the things that's important with playing Warcry is that your models are all individuals, and I really want my models to look like individuals in the battlefield so I can tell them apart. So which one has the destiny levels, which one has the magic item, etc., the artifacts. So it did encourage me to buy a second box of Sepulchral Guard to really kind of push forward that individuality, especially after looking and seeing all the options that are available.
Very cool. Well, it did, interestingly enough, I picked up or I have a bunch of the Vanguard Stormcast from when they launched in AOS. So I have a bunch of Vanguard Hunters. I've got guys with hurricane bows, and I've got them started painting, but I haven't kind of been able. I've been focused on the Untamed Beasts. Part of me is tempted with either the Castigators or Knave Black Talon and the Gryph-hounds, because I've always loved that Gryph-hound kit. I've always loved the Knave Black Talon kit. Those Castigators are fantastic, and it's all an excuse to kind of pick up these cool models that otherwise I probably wouldn't pick up for a Stormcast army. So while I have a bunch of the Vanguard stuff already, like seeing kind of that quick kind of, I could pick those up and use them here, like you were just saying, Paul, the coolest sculpts kind of deserve to be on the table for Warcry, it feels like. So I think that's one thing that popped up for me. I'll say that I had the same kind of thought that the Ideneth is one where those Reavers are fantastic. But I'm definitely going to keep my eye open for, start collecting if I get a chance to go in that way. Just get a little bit of a deal on it, some value. But any last thoughts or kind of recommendations or reiterations, or kind of you want to kind of nail home advice for either players looking to come into Warcry for the first time or players looking to invite somebody in who hasn't played or isn't playing Warcry yet? How would you recap kind of the advice here, Josh?
I think the most important thing is in most areas, I think you'd probably find at least one store that's got a demo set or somebody who has a demo set. And I highly encourage anybody who doesn't have anything yet to just go try the game with the standard warbands and find out if you like it or not. But I think you'll enjoy it. And then hopefully we've given you some tips and tricks to kind of find which narrative hook you got and go from there.
Payvand, you had made a point to reiterate kind of the very first choice somebody should make when choosing a warband. Why don't you reiterate that for us here?
Wait, what did I say before? No, I'm just teasing you. No, yeah, definitely. If you're into Warcry, pick up the book and then pick up the minis you like the most, and just that's all you need. Just get in there, start playing games. It's super fun. It's super easy to pick up. Have fun and just get into it.
Absolutely. Paul, any last words in this life? I mean, for this podcast?
I do agree with Payvand. You pick the models that you want, but also pick the play style you want, right? If you want to be able to really kind of shift around those points and decide, like Josh, of I want more fighters with 2 blades, right? Or that 2-inch reach, right? Then maybe one of these non-chaos starters might be a little easier for you because they aren't all 1 pose or 1 or 2 pose minis. But if you're looking for something that really just will allow you to assemble and get playing right away, and you learn the warband as you're playing, you might want to start with those chaos warbands instead.
Very cool. And our goal here in this episode was just to make kind of picking what you're going to do next easy, to find a way to get into Warcry, to join in this game and find the joy that we've found in it, and make it easy for you to introduce somebody else into this. The starter set is a fantastic value, and I think there should be no question that if somebody's looking that is the best value that Games Workshop has put out for this game. If Untamed Beasts or the Iron Golems or that particular terrain doesn't suit you, then there are a number of ways to get into this game really easily with the Chaos Warbands and a number of those Ravaged Land sets and all the little pieces like the book, the rule book, etc. that you need that are easy to get a hold of and a great value in and of themselves. And then if you're interested in one of these other kind of warbands, if you have the models already, I think that's what their prime intention was. If you have these models, here's how you get into and play Warcry with your Age of Sigmar models. But if some of those, you really like them and want to kind of pursue those as your first warband, we just wanted this to be a way for you to easily kind of pick what you wanted and know what you're getting into to get started and playing as fast as possible so that you can fall in love with it and become a fan like we are. All right. Well, thanks again for listening. We're going to have more to say in the coming weeks as we see new expansion come out. And just thank you for listening.
It's time to put a muzzle on this episode. If it was a good dog, support the show with a positive review on iTunes, sharing it with friends, joining us for hobby discussions at themortalrealms.com/Discord, or leave a tip at themortalrealms.com/Patreon. More content is available at themortalrealms.com and on Twitter at Dogs of Warcry.
Welcome to the Midwest side, those ruthless, narratively driven podcasts you'll never come by. I'll be in fall. We get so far, dice rolling below, and this one's never stolen, no smoke to the Dogs of Warcry.